Hello, everybody, and you're watching here Women's Wrestling Talk, which is the number one women's wrestling talk on the planet. I'm Astrid, and today I'm here interviewing Delmi. How are you, Delmi?
Hello, I'm doing great.
Yeah, thank you for being with me here today and taking some time out of your day for the interview here as well.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
I had to do a little dive into I went and I did some research on several interviews you had and on your socials too. And one thing that drew me to you because I think it's something we somewhat have in common because I like a little bit of it, but not entirely. But that's one thing that is like you like a lot of Japanese culture. I ended up liking Sailor Moon, so that's something that I wanted to ask you about. Like, what drew you to Japanese culture?
It's actually really pretty funny. When I was little, like I'm saying like 4 years old, like 5 years old, my family, my cousins and uncles always joked that I was actually adopted because I didn't look Spanish. I looked more like, you know, Asian. And so they like always made the joke that I was actually adopted and they would call me China after the wrestler. Um, so I just like I knew I wasn't adopted. But I was well fine. Like I'm just gonna like find out what this is like. And so,
Yeah.
I grew up with like Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon, like the simple anime stuff. And then from there, I was lucky enough where I grew up with like the internet was starting to be a thing.
Mhm.
So from there I was able to like research a few things. Like I liked anything that had to do with Japanese culture. Like I taught myself how to make origami. I taught myself how to do like the writing. I like went to a high school that taught Japanese because I wanted to learn it.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's actually a college preparatory school. And I was like, I don't want to go to college, but like they have the language that I want to speak. So I studied really hard so I could get into that school. It was, yeah.
Yeah, I like that because I don't know how it started, but I remember like my mom is used to buying Hello Kitties, so I ended up buying Hello Kitties. I've seen it so many times, I ended up liking it. And same thing with like Sailor Moon. I don't know where I got it from, but I started like getting things here and there, and I got intrigued by that part of the culture. So I remember watching their shows at least for Sailor Moon. But it also made me think, like you said, based on your answer now too, because one thing that we also have in common is that we're both Latinas. So I want to talk about is like what is that for you and how important is that representation for you being on screen and showing that you're Latina as well?
I don't think it's something that I got right away when I started wrestling. When I did start wrestling, me and Ashley were some of the only Latinas in our area who were wrestling. And so it didn't click to us right away that like it was important. But coming around now, I'm like, oh, like this does mean stuff. Like it does have an impact and it does have weight. Like even though I didn't grow up being like super proud of my culture because I didn't really understand it too much and I wasn't like close with my extended family. Now looking back on my childhood, I'm like, I'm really happy that I grew up the way I did because if I didn't, then I wouldn't be the person I am. But I'm happy I like had those foods in my house. I'm happy I had those like crazy problems with family. Like I'm happy those are the things that I relate to. Like it's almost funny when you see a comedian who's, Latino and they like say the jokes and you're like, ah, yes, like we are
Yeah.
toxic.
I think the ones that enjoy the most is when they do the jokes about vapor rub, and I was like, "Jish, at least with
Ah,
that in my family, every time it's like you gotta cuff vapor rub. You know, just running vapor rub. That's the answer to
I know.
everything."
Yeah, so
So
we eat it.
yeah, I remember because I was watching Blue Beetle not too long ago when I think the weekend it came out, and that was one of the jokes in the one of the scenes, and I was like, "That is so relatable." I can tell already by the container what it was for that, and then showing the label, I was like, "That's vapor rub, isn't it?" It's one of those things like when you're Hispanic, it's like, here, it's for everything.
Yeah, and like I love having that. I love knowing what it was like growing up in that.
Yeah. Another thing that I think I learned, if I got it correctly from one of your other interviews too, is that you're also somebody that likes a lot of like I want to call it emo music, I guess, if you want to categorize it like that. Did you have a particular band that you liked?
I don't know if it falls in the emo category, but it's Bright Eyes. It's actually my favorite band. They're more like indie folk. I just like sad music. Like it's such a bad thing. Like I could be
Mm.
having a good period in my life and I'll be listening to like a breakup song, and my boyfriend's in the other room like, hello, like you're really fine. Hello, right here. And I'm just like, I just like it just feels relaxing. Yeah, I don't know. Relaxes me.
I feel you. I feel like I have like from like those moments that I'm like really stressed. I'm like I listen to it even if I don't sing along, just because it makes me feel like I'm taking out the anger when I'm just listening to it. At times it just feels, I don't know, like I can relate to it in that sort of way. Um, but I wanted to get now into like the wrestling aspect. It's just learning about you and when you started wrestling. What was that moment when you realized that you wanted to train to become a wrestler?
It was exciting. I was signing up with the school that my sister was, so cool to be able to do it with her.
Yeah. And like you mentioned your sister, and I've seen in other interviews you have as well. How was that just training with her, or even learning, watching wrestling with her, and even training with her, and even tag teaming with her too? What was that experience like?
It was a lot of fun. Like I couldn't have had a better experience starting out wrestling. We always had each other to protect each other and like go to and like vent to each other with things. So it was really easy putting matches together, traveling with someone you know.
Yeah. And going back to thinking when you started to watch wrestling with her, what was that moment that drew you into, watch wrestling and think this is something that I can see myself doing sometime in the future, that you have like a particular match or a particular person that really drew you in as you were watching it?
No, I actually didn't grow up thinking I would do. I mean, as a kid, like you always like play around and mess around and like, but I kind of knew I couldn't do it because, and I don't know why I knew this as like a 6 year old, but I kind of knew I couldn't do it because I was a girl. Because as a 6 year old, my brain was understanding that the men's and the women's wrestling look different. And I wanted to do the men's wrestling, but I was like, but I guess like you can't if you're a girl because it doesn't like my brain was young, but like the way my brain thought, it was like, oh, you can't do that because of that. And I remember feeling very defeated as a child when I saw there was a Trish Stratus like segment where she like took off the towel and like jumped into Vince McMahon's arms. And I remember thinking as a child, like, I don't want to do that. Like that. I don't know. I just think
Mhm.
it's really sad. Like looking back at my thoughts, I knew I couldn't. And
Mhm.
I think that's what makes it so much more important with how far we've come. Even if people say, like, oh, the storylines aren't good enough, but like, look
Mhm.
at how far we've come. A little girl can
Mhm.
watch nowadays and she can dream to be a wrestler, not just a valet, not just a
Mhm.
commercial babe, not just someone who's like doing some weird like food competition. No, she can dream and be a wrestler. And I didn't have that growing up. Not saying like
Mhm.
boohoo me, but like I didn't have those
Mhm.
thoughts growing up because I didn't see it.
Yeah, I've been through like something similar when I kept watching it and thinking, oh, this I don't think this is something for me because the women were not really well represented at the time.
Yeah.
And then I started watching Impact, and that's what drew me because I like how Impact was using the women at the time and giving them that spotlight that other companies were not. And I saw that kind of like it happened like a chain reaction and seeing other companies do it afterwards as well. And it made me realize it's like, okay, this is something that can inspire other women to become wrestlers now, be like you said, because I'm thinking now of how it looks versus how it was before as well.
Yeah, it was really different. And I know we like now when they like say the history of it, they like point out the good matches and it's like, but you
Mhm.
guys didn't really let us have those good matches that often. Like we got
Yeah,
those good matches maybe once every other month.
yeah. And when you started to train, what was something that you learned while you were training that you didn't think about before because you're seeing that from this like new aspect as you're training?
Honestly, everything, every move. Whenever they like called in, they were like, "This is this." My brain was just like, "Oh wow, yeah, I guess that is that." Like I don't know. There was I guess because I didn't do like an what you got like a sport where you're fighting. Like I didn't have a
Mm-hmm.
background going into wrestling,
Mm-hmm.
which anyone who wants to get into wrestling, you don't need, but it does help to do some sort of sport at least. I didn't have like a fighting background. So they're saying all these like judo moves and I'm just like cool. Cool, man. So I just want to do a Rana. They're like, when do we learn Ranas?
And thinking also like when you think about that training aspect as you're starting, do you have any piece of advice that somebody taught you that has stuck to you ever since and you like haven't forgotten about it even now?
I met Paige slash Soraya when I was first starting to train in the mall. And I like approached her, obviously, one 17-year-old would do, seeing their idol. And I approached her and I was just like, hey, like, I'm like a huge fan. I'm training to be a wrestler. And like, is there anything? I don't think I asked her for advice, but I asked her for a photo. So I took the photo and then she was like, oh, just like keep training, stay hungry, stay humble. And so that's been me for like the past 10 years now, just like staying in there and like not getting too like egotistical about something I accomplish. I'm very much like, okay, awesome. I'm glad I did this. I'm glad like we got to this, like, next level. What's next? I'm constantly all like, what's next kind of person.
And thinking of what's next, I know you recently went to Germany. Is there anywhere, like I know you also been in Japan as well to wrestle. So is there anywhere you haven't wrestled in outside of the US that you would like to go to sometime soon?
I would love to go to back to Europe and try to do like the UK and go to Ireland. I love OTT, over the top wrestling. I like discovered them during 2020 when everything was shut down, and I just like fell in love with their product. I had seen a few matches, but I hadn't like watched full shows. And so sometimes with like independent wrestling, when you actually sit down and you watch a full show of like, you can see like the thought process much clearer. Like you can see how much like love and attention was put into this product, and it's just so exciting to see. It's like, man, like these people care.
Yeah, and thinking of like so far with all those shows that you had, do you have any, if you remember, any kind of fun or memorable experience that you have with the fans so far, even in independent shows, let's say?
Uh there's like a lot of like fun memories I have with fans, but I don't think anything is like a story. Like it's
Mhm.
not a fun
Yeah.
story. I'm like a bad storyteller.
Well, thinking about storytelling, I wanted to know also about your nickname, the God Queen. And, how did you come up with that nickname, and what does that mean to you too?
I've been saying this a lot, but I feel like I really like matured within the past like year and two and came into my own of who I am as a woman. For a while and I still am. I was a tomboy and I was very like self-conscious and like try to make myself small to not be in the way of anything. I was very like concerned with my presentation. Early on in wrestling, I had like there was a few people who were like trying to like say that I had an ego and like just coming across as strong just because I had opinions on things and like voiced them. And so after that, I kind of made myself into like a small little thing in the room so I wouldn't like bother anyone or step on toes. And after this like past year or two, I don't know what happened, but I really just like grew up in a way where my maturity has come in and I'm like, oh my God, like, okay, I'm entering adulthood now. And it's kind of exciting. I'm really like more proud to be a woman. Like before, I used to feel so burdened with it where it's like, okay, like don't do this because you're a girl. If you do this, like you're gonna come across the wrong way. And now I'm just like, who cares? Like I know I'm not the problem here. Like I'm just being myself. I'm just like, you know, doing a small thing that makes me happy. It's not affecting anyone personally. So why should I be apologetic about it? And
Mhm.
so I'm just really into that I am female, hear me roar kind of mentality with it. And God Queen just felt like that. It felt like this strong mindset of I'm here and I'm not in the way.
Yeah. I also want to think back of like your experience wrestling in the pandemic. How was that for you, especially like when you were in AEW, for example, when you had no fans and you had was like peers, to put it like that, and at ringside in the audience too. So how was that experience like wrestling in the pandemic in that kind of setting?
Um, it was okay. It was fun because you would go out and wrestle your match, and then you would kind of just relax in between, before and like after, and watching your friends' matches and like cheering. I was the loudest cheerer whenever we did like the tape that Limitless. I would get so into them. I would be like, no way, and it was just like genuine. But that's just how I am, and it was rough because there's no crowd, there's a little bit less adrenaline, and so you actually feel like all the moves. You're like, this sucks.
Yeah. I also want to think back of you being now with MLW, and what is your goal with the MLW's featherweight division and your championship reign as a whole?
I really like what we're doing with different brand crossovers and stuff like that. We recently had MLW like with WXW. We are doing New Japan versus MLW. So dwelling more into that, and like really, you know, bringing everyone up another level, and sharing the wealth in indie wrestling and in wrestling in general.
And thinking of that crossover too, is there anybody from a particular company that you would like to face in any kind of crossover like that?
Soraya from AEW, Mercedes Monet. I know she's not tied to any company right now, but she was in like New Japan, New Japan Strong. Trinity right now is in Impact, and she's killing boarding, and the virtuoso Barrazo would be insane to like cross over with from Impact. Just to name a few. I won't take up too.
Mhm. No, I feel you, and those are interesting names that I definitely would love to see your face sometime soon. So that's something I would like to see there as well. And thinking that as well of the MLW locker room, how is that different in the environment now compared to other locker rooms you've been in the past too?
I really like the MLW locker room in terms of like a TV production locker room. It feels super friendly. It's inviting. The camera crew and the production staff are all so like happy to be there in terms of what they're recording for you. They don't care if like you have to do another take. I've been at like indie shows where God forbid you have to do another take for your promo. They're just like, and it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I messed up a word. You know what? Just use that one. It's fine. I'll look like it. But they're like, all right, like they're like trying to have fun with it, and they're genuine about it. They're like, ooh, let's do this instead. Ooh, what if we say it like this?
Mhm.
Just like it's fun for that reason. Like it
Yeah.
makes it exciting to go to work.
And the last question I had for you is from two friends of mine who are huge fans of MLW that I like to cover very often, Bobby Monson and Papa Smokes.
Oh yeah.
So because I knew I was going to interview you, I told them I they could have one question for you if they wanted to. So they collectively wanted to ask this. They said, with the return of Selena de la Renta and MLW and her mentioning that she's bringing up some luchadors to the company, is there any particular names that you would like to wrestle against when it comes to that aspect of luchadors?
Um, I actually don't watch enough lucha wrestling, which shame on me. So I don't have any names, unfortunately. But I'm open to anyone.
Oh, so there you go, boys. It's an open challenge more than anything. Whoever wants to come face tell me, there it's open. Doors are open there for you. I know I wanted to thank you for being here with me today, and more than anything, and taking time out of your day for the interview as well. Is anything that you would like to tell people where they can find you and what else do you have going on sometime soon?
Yeah. So all my social media handles are at Delmi Exo. That's just my name. And you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. I recently posted some Germany vlogs onto my TikTok for everyone to watch. So go and check those out. And tomorrow I will be wrestling Max the Impaler, or Maxi Poo, as I like to call him. And you can check that out on iwtv.live.
Yeah. Well, everybody, thank you for watching. My name is Astrid, and thank you for watching Women's Wrestling Talk. This is the number one women's show on the planet. Thank you, everybody.